You've probably heard the phrase thrown around a million times. Someone hits $1 million in net worth, and everyone acts like they've arrived. They've made it. They're finally set for life. But here's the truth that nobody wants to admit out loud. Being a millionaire doesn't mean what it used to mean. In fact, for most people living in developed countries today, millionaire status is becoming almost meaningless as a marker of actual wealth or financial security. Let's start with the basics. $1 million sounds like an enormous amount of money when you say it out loud. 1 million. It's a number that's been celebrated in movies and television for decades. It's been the dream number for regular people trying to build wealth. But the reality is that inflation has completely transformed what that number actually represents in terms of purchasing power and real-world financial freedom. Think about your grandparents' generation. If someone had $1 million in 1970, they were genuinely wealthy. That money could buy you a beautiful home, a luxury car, and provide a very comfortable lifestyle for decades. Your children could go to college. You could retire early. You could live extremely well with just the interest alone. But fast forward to today, and $1 million is just not the same thing anymore. Inflation compounds over time, and the effect is dramatic. $1 million in 1970 would be worth approximately $8 million in today's money when you account for inflation. That's the kind of purchasing power that $1 million used to represent. So when someone today says they're a millionaire, you need to ask yourself, are they actually rich by historical standards, or are they just keeping up with inflation? Let's look at some concrete examples. Suppose you're a millionaire living in a major city: New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Toronto, London, Sydney. These are places where real estate prices have skyrocketed. $1 million might buy you a modest home in a decent neighborhood. It might get you a small apartment in a trendy area with no yard. You're not buying a mansion. You're not buying a luxury penthouse. You're just getting a regular home in an expensive city. Now let's think about retirement. A very common piece of financial advice is the 4% rule. Withdraw 4% of your investment portfolio each year, and theoretically your money should last throughout your retirement. So with $1 million, that's $40,000 per year. In many places, that's not a comfortable retirement. That's barely middle-class income. After taxes, you might be looking at $30,000 to live on. Rent, food, healthcare, utilities, insurance. Your $1 million doesn't feel so secure anymore. The situation gets even more complicated when we consider that most millionaires aren't sitting on a pile of cash. Their wealth is usually tied up in real estate, retirement accounts, business equity, and investments. Accessing that wealth often comes with taxes and penalties. You can't just walk up to your $1 million net worth and start spending it freely. The actual liquid money available might be a fraction of that number. Let's also talk about what it actually takes to become a millionaire these days. It's not as impossible as it sounds, but it's not as rare as it used to be either. Thanks to decades of compound growth in stock markets, pension funds, real estate appreciation, and inflation itself, millions of ordinary people have crossed the millionaire threshold without feeling particularly wealthy. A couple who bought a home 30 years ago in a decent neighborhood might have a $1 million house. That doesn't make them feel rich. They feel like they're living in the same house they bought decades ago. Retirement accounts matter too. If you've been saving for 30 or 40 years in tax-advantaged retirement accounts like a 401k or an IRA, and the stock market has performed reasonably well, congratulations, you've probably crossed the millionaire line. But you can't access that money until you're 59 and a half without penalties. So that millionaire status is almost theoretical. It's real on paper, but it's locked away. Here's another angle that people don't think about enough. Being a millionaire puts you into a strange middle ground financially. You're not rich enough to have true financial security and freedom. You can't live lavishly without worrying about money. You might not be able to retire comfortably without being very careful about how you spend. But you're wealthy enough that people assume you have it made. The psychological burden of that mismatch is real. Consider the costs of modern life that didn't exist a generation ago. Healthcare expenses have grown exponentially. College education has become shockingly expensive. Childcare costs can rival rent in many cities. A health crisis or a major family situation can drain $1 million nest egg much faster than you'd think. These are realities that people with old-fashioned ideas of millionaire wealth never had to consider at the same scale. Then there's the question of lifestyle inflation and relative wealth. Your neighbors might also be millionaires. Your coworkers might be millionaires. The person you went to high school with, who had less direction than you, might also be a millionaire. When everyone around you has reached that threshold, it stops feeling special. It stops feeling like you've achieved something extraordinary. You feel middle class because in your social circle, you actually are middle class. Media and celebrity culture have also warped our understanding of wealth. We see billionaires and 100 millionaires constantly. We see lavish lifestyles funded by tens of millions of dollars. We see tech founders and entrepreneurs with more wealth than entire nations. In that context, a millionaire looks positively ordinary. A millionaire can't buy a sports team. A millionaire can't launch rockets into space. A millionaire is basically just a regular person who saved well and got lucky with timing and markets. Now, let's be clear about something. Having $1 million is still a privilege. Most people in the world will never have that amount of net worth. Most people alive today are not millionaires, so we're not saying that being a millionaire is bad or that you shouldn't try to build wealth. What we're saying is that the psychological milestone of hitting $1 million has lost its significance. It's not the life-changing, dream-fulfilling moment it's been marketed as. The real question you should be asking yourself is not whether you want to be a millionaire. The real question is what financial outcomes you actually want. Then you need to understand how much you actually need to spend and what your investments will actually generate. Do you want to send your kids to college? Then you need to plan for education costs specifically. Do you want to own a home outright? Then you need to plan for that real estate market. Do you want a comfortable lifestyle in a specific city or region? Then you need to understand the actual cost of living in that place. These specific concrete goals matter far more than hitting an arbitrary number. $1 million might get you some of these things. It might get you none of them. It depends entirely on your circumstances, your location, your family situation, and what you actually want from your life. The millionaire status is just a number on a spreadsheet. It doesn't automatically unlock happiness or freedom or security. Let's think about what true financial security actually looks like in modern times. It's not about hitting one magic number. It's about having multiple income streams. It's about having passive income that covers your basic expenses. It's about having flexibility and options. It's about not being trapped in a job you hate because you need the paycheck. It's about having the ability to take time off, to pursue passions, to help family members in need. It's about sleep at night without financial stress. You can be a millionaire and not have those things. You can have $1 million in net worth, but if most of it is tied up in an illiquid asset like a primary residence or a business you can't easily sell, you're not actually financially free. You can have $1 million in retirement accounts that you can't touch for years, and you're not able to use that wealth right now when you might need it. On the flip side, you might not be a millionaire yet, but if you have stable employment, low expenses, good health insurance, and a consistent savings plan, you might have more financial security than someone with $1 million net worth who has high expenses and no passive income. So what should you actually be targeting? First, build an emergency fund. Most people should aim for 3 to 6 months of expenses in liquid savings. This is your insurance against unexpected events. Second, figure out your actual basic living expenses, not your fantasy expenses, not what you think you should spend. What do you actually need to spend to live the life you want? Third, calculate how much wealth you need to generate that income passively through investments. This is the real number that matters. For someone who spends $50,000 a year, you might need $1.25 million invested conservatively to generate that with the 4% rule. But if you can cut expenses to $30,000 a year, you only need $750,000. That's a huge difference. The actual number that matters is not a round million. It's whatever number generates the lifestyle you want. Also consider that inflation will keep rising. That comfortable nest egg you build today will need to grow tomorrow. This is why investment growth matters. This is why having your money in assets that appreciate and generate returns is crucial. Sitting on $1 million in cash that loses value to inflation is not a winning strategy. You need your wealth to work for you and grow alongside the economy. The other issue with focusing purely on millionaire status is that it ignores the importance of ongoing income. If you're retired and living off investments, market crashes can be devastating. If you're still earning income from a job or a business, market crashes are just a temporary setback on your path to greater wealth. Ongoing earned income is a powerful tool that shouldn't be dismissed. Some of the most financially secure people are those with high incomes and reasonable expenses, not necessarily those with the highest net worth. Let's also acknowledge that the millionaire milestone has become somewhat democratized by inflation and time. If you're 35 years old and have a net worth of $1 million, you've done well, but you're not a rare creature. If you've been working and saving for 40 years and you're 65 years old with a net worth of $1 million, you might actually be behind where you should be for a comfortable retirement. The timeline matters. The age at which you hit millionaire status matters much more than the fact that you hit it. Young millionaires have something special. 25-year-old millionaires have decades for compound growth to work in their favor. They have time to take risks. They have runway. But a 60-year-old millionaire who's just hitting that number might be in a tight spot if they plan to retire soon. Here's another reality that often gets ignored. Most millionaires are not flashy. They're not driving Ferraris or buying yachts. Most millionaires live relatively modest lives. They shop at regular grocery stores. They drive sensible cars. They live in nice but not ostentatious homes. They've read the research about how happiness stops increasing after basic needs and comfort are met. They understand that spending huge amounts of money doesn't actually improve life quality. This is actually good news. It means that becoming comfortable and financially secure doesn't require becoming a flashy consumer. You don't need to turn into a different person. You don't need to adopt a completely different lifestyle. You just need to be intentional about money. You need to spend on things that matter to you and cut ruthlessly on things that don't. You need to think about the long-term impact of your financial decisions. Let's wrap this up with the real message. Millionaire status means nothing anymore because it's become a number that reflects inflation and time rather than actual prosperity. $1 million is not inherently secure or luxurious. It's a point on a much longer spectrum of wealth. What actually matters is that you understand your real financial situation, know what you actually need to spend, know what your assets actually generate, know your income sources, know your vulnerability points. Make a plan that's specific to your circumstances and your goals. Stop chasing the millionaire label. Start chasing financial security, freedom, and the ability to live the life you actually want. For some people, that might require more than $1 million. For others, it might require less. The magic number is not a round million. The magic number is whatever number gives you sleep at night.